Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
French boat Dignity eludes Greek crackdown by setting sail to Gaza. Pakistani tribal leaders demand an end to US drone attacks. And Bahrain begins national dialogue as crackdown on activists continues. Mosaic World News from the Middle East begins now.
Organizers of the French ship to break the siege on Gaza told us that their ship, named Al-Karama or Dignity, managed to leave Greek regional waters and is heading towards the Gaza Strip. Speaking to Agence France Presse, they said the ship carrying fuel and food is expected to arrive to the Strip's coast in 1 or 2 days. Greek Coast Guards intercepted a Canadian ship trying to sail to Gaza. Activists said the ship tried to defy the ban imposed by the Greek government, affirming their insistence on sailing to break the Israeli siege on Gaza.
It does not seem that the second Freedom Flotilla will stop trying to sail, as Greek authorities appear to be determined on preventing the convoy from leaving its ports, even by force. The Greek Coast Guard intercepted a Canadian ship merely 10 minutes after it attempted to sail towards Gaza. The ship is carrying supplies and activists who are trying to challenge the ban imposed by the Greek government.
On this ship, we have medicine that we want to deliver to Gaza.
The ship named Tahrir, or Liberation, left the port of Crete Island with over 40 people on board. Most of them are Canadian, in addition to people from Belgium, France, Italy, and Turkey. According to activists on board the ship, members of the Greek Coast Guard took control of the ship without arresting anyone. This was the second attempt to sail after a ship was intercepted on Saturday, prevented from sailing, and had its captain arrested. 2 days ago, Greek authorities proposed to deliver the humanitarian aid from the Second Freedom Flotilla to the Palestinian Authority. The proposal was rejected by the activists, who considered the move an indication of complicity with the Israeli siege on the Gaza Strip.
The only decision used against us is a political decision, and that is illegal. We should sail in order to break the illegal siege imposed on Gaza. It is a collective punishment that violates the Geneva Agreement and international law.
We see Greece today as a victim of Israel's extortion. I believe that Israel is using Greece's economic setbacks to blackmail it in order to prevent this flotilla from sailing. We hope they will change their mind.
The international flotilla carrying humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip is facing a series of difficulties in sabotage operations. Politically, the occupation entity has been and is still exerting pressure on the Greek authorities to prevent the Freedom Flotilla from heading to the Strip, which has been besieged for 3 years.
Seven Pakistani soldiers were killed and 8 were injured in 2 separate attacks. One targeted a tribal area and the other the province of Baluchistan. This comes as hundreds of tribal and political figures attended a conference demanding an end to U.S. raids on tribal areas. Popular demonstrations called for by political parties were also held to pressure the government to stop the raids and cut off NATO supply lines to Afghanistan through Pakistan. Our correspondent, Ahmad Zidane, has the details on the escalating protests against foreign interference and the demand to sever the supply lines.
A Loya Jirga, or tribal assembly, was held. However, it discussed political issues. Here at the Central Hall in Peshawar, Pakistani political parties put their differences aside. All parties, including the Pakistan People's Party, assembled to demand an end to the American raids on tribal areas. The participants formed a unified council to demand the government to pressure Washington to stop the raids.
We, and all the parties here, are against these attacks. We condemn them, and we will continue to fight against them.
This is great injustice, especially since the attacks they call drones are killing civilians. This is great injustice.
In tribal regions, American shelling continues, and most of the victims are civilians, according to Pakistani estimates. So far, demonstrations have been limited to tribal areas. The largest turnout is of hundreds or thousands of protesters in Pakistani cities. In Parliament, there was unanimous consent to stop the raids, but to no avail. Their hearts are with tribal areas, but their swords are pointed at them.
I think that the government and the army will make the difference. The drone attacks won't stop unless the army or the government decide to stop or object to them. In all cases, I don't believe this will happen. The Parliament's commitment is just a verbal one.
The supplies that pass through Pakistan to NATO and Afghanistan constitute 80% of all the coalition's supplies. This is a bargaining tool for Pakistan. Pakistani opposition political parties are calling on the Pakistani government to keep the supply lines open to NATO forces in Afghanistan in exchange for an end to U.S. raids on tribal areas. The question today in Peshawar is, will the Pakistani government adopt this position? Ahmad Zidan, Al Jazeera, Peshawar.
First story this hour takes us to Bahrain, where a fresh round of talks has begun between the government and the opposition. Political issues are the top of the agenda, and the first round of talks was held on Saturday amid popular protests against such discussions. Leaders from only two opposition groups, Al-Wafaq and Al-Wad, are participating. This because other opposition leaders are in jail. Al-Wafaq has warned that it will withdraw from the negotiations if people's demands are not heeded. Now the talks go on amid continued crackdown by the Saudi-backed regime on pro-reform protests that started back in February. The regime forces used gunshots and tear gas to break up a protest in the northeastern village of Nuadrat. Now the protesters were chanting slogans against Bahrain's King Hamad. Well, a series of airstrikes by the Yemeni military has killed at least 4 civilians in the southern part of the country. Now the air raids hit the outskirts of Zanzibar city. A local official says one of the raids targeted the home of the deputy head of parliament, Muhammad Ali al-Shadadi. 3 family members were killed and another 7 wounded. The official says it's unknown while al-Shadadi's home had been targeted. He sided with protesters demanding the Yemeni regime's downfall. 1 more civilian has been killed and 3 others injured in another air raid. Meanwhile, officials say the military has carried out several airstrikes on militants' positions, killing 6 of them. Meanwhile, people in Yemen have spilled into the streets to demand the fall of Ali Abdullah Saleh's regime. The protesters also chanted slogans against Saudi Arabia. The anti-regime mass protests were held in southern cities of Damar and Taz. Meanwhile, Saleh's forces briefly arrested the head of an opposition party. Mohammed Hassan Zaid, the leader of Al-Haq party, was detained at Sana'a airport while leaving for Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. The situation has been tense across Yemen over the past few days. Saleh's loyalists have frequently clashed with anti-regime protesters, including tribesmen. Many people have died in the clashes, and Saleh is currently in Saudi Arabia receiving treatment for injuries he suffered in a rocket attack last month. And now to Lebanon, where the parliament has begun discussing the policy statement of the newly formed government. Viewer discretion is advised as the following footage contains flash photography. Now, the session was opened by Prime Minister Najib Mikati, who read out the statement, which is harshly criticized by the March 14th alliance. Heated debates are expected over a controversial article dealing with the UN-backed tribunal investigating the assassination of ex-Premier Rafiq Hariri. Hezbollah and its allies, which received the majority of seats in the government, view the tribunal as a U.S.-Israeli plot. Now, the session is slated to last 3 days, after which Parliament is expected to give a vote of confidence.
According to reports, Syrian security forces killed at least 6 protesters in the city of Hama on the second day of clashes witnessed in the city. Activists said tanks continue to besiege Hama without entering the city. Security forces arrested more than 20 people yesterday in an attempt to retake control of the city.
Amid protests and gunfire, the military and security operation continues in Hama. Protesters continue their demonstrations as well. Reports indicate that tanks are encircling Hama, while residents fear a major attack on the city that witnessed the largest protests against President Bashar al-Assad's rule. Relevant information said that hundreds of young men blocked the roads leading to the main residential neighbourhoods with trash cans, wood and metal sheets in an attempt to prevent the forces from advancing. Syrian forces used live bullets against protesters in Hama, which led to casualties. Meanwhile, the Syrian Human Rights Observatory said the Syrian security agencies arrested over 500 activists and protesters in the past 6 days, and nearly 10,000 have been arrested since protests began. Popular demonstrations continue, and the crackdown proceeds while the Syrian government's call for a dialogue is ongoing. The dialogue comes as an attempt to deliver a previous promise made by the Syrian president, who stated that dialogue is the main focus at the moment. The supervisory body of the National Dialogue sent invitations to about 150 Syrians, including opposition figures inside and outside of Syria, such as Haytham al-Maleh, Haytham Mana, and Burhan Kalyoun. They will attend a consultative meeting scheduled to take place on July 10th to discuss what is referred to as the basis for a comprehensive National Dialogue conference. Meanwhile, Syrian sources indicate that a committee was formed to review the constitution in order to begin the transition towards democracy. However, in parallel to the dialogue called for by the Syrian authorities, the government continues to rely on security forces as a solution to the unrest. Dissidents say this may lead to more contempt by the people and an escalation of the popular movement. Wahel Hajar, BBC.
Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi is personally supervising contact with the armed Libyan opposition, represented by the Libyan Transitional National Council. This was announced again by the Tripoli regime's Deputy Foreign Minister, Khalid al-Qaim. Al-Qaim said that there has been continuous contact between Tripoli and Benghazi for 2 months in a number of European capitals, including the Italian capital, Rome, in order to end the bloodbath and civil war in Libya.
That's true. I mean, نعم هذا صحيح كانت هناك محادثات مباشرة على مدى الشهرين الماضيين.
It is true that there have been direct talks for the past 2 months. There have also been phone calls with some members of the Transitional National Council and some rebels. As I said, they are from various factions. Therefore, they do not talk as one entity. This did not only occur in 2 or 3 locations. Contact has been continuing for the past 2 months and is still ongoing. I am certain that some of them may come to Tripoli to conduct direct negotiations with the Libyan authorities.
لإجراء محادثات مباشرة مع السلطات الليبية.
Russian newspaper Kommersant said that Gaddafi is prepared to step down in exchange for safety guarantees. However, a spokesman for the Libyan government denied the claim. The newspaper quoted quoted a Russian official saying that Gaddafi is sending signals that he is ready to relinquish power in exchange for safety guarantees for his family. The Russian newspaper also mentioned that Gaddafi wants his son, Saif al-Islam, to be allowed to run in elections if he steps down. The opposition may reject this condition.
وروسيا لا تزال على خلاف مع حلف شمال الأطلسي بشأن الحملة العسكرية على ليبيا.
Russia is still disputing NATO's military campaign in Libya, as confirmed by leaders from both sides after they met in Russia's Sochi resort by the Black Sea. NATO's Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen defended the coalition's operation in Libya after meeting with Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. Rasmussen said that NATO will execute these operations in strict compliance with the Security Council's resolutions. For his part, Medvedev described the Libyan crisis as a critical test for a new strategic notion that NATO has adopted. The Russian president also met with the president of South Africa, Jacob Zuma, who submitted the African Union's plan for Libya during a tripartite meeting with Rasmussen.
في موقع جنزور على بعد 30 كيلومترا غرب العاصمة الليبية طرابلس قال النظام
In Janzur, 30 kilometers west of the Libyan capital Tripoli, Muammar al-Gaddafi's regime said it intercepted 2 boats carrying weapons for the Libyan opposition. Libyan authorities took journalists to a location adjacent to the Tripoli port and showed them a shipment of weapons, including AK machine guns and explosive devices, placed in containers with the Qatari army's markings. Meanwhile, leaders of the Libyan regime said that the weapons were loaded onto 2 boats from a ship with the Tunisian flag. The journalists did not examine the 2 boats or interview their crew, comprised of 11 people, including 2 officers, according to the Libyan authorities. France no longer sees a necessity in transferring weapons to the Libyan opposition by parachute. French Defense Minister Gérard Longuet made the statement today, saying that the Libyan revolutionaries have become more organized and able to manage the weapons issue on their own. Longuet said the opposition founded a political system that is independent from Tripoli, which enables it to manage its defense affairs and establish relations with its foreign partners.
Two Palestinians were martyred, and a third was wounded in Israeli artillery shelling that targeted central Gaza. Palestinian sources said Israeli artillery shelling targeted an agricultural area east of the Maghazi refugee camp in the middle of the Strip. This is the first Israeli raid to kill 2 Palestinians in Gaza since mid-May.
The Palestinian Authority condemned Israel's decision to approve the construction of 900 units in East Jerusalem's Gilo settlement. The Palestinian Authority asserted that this decision destroys any attempt to establish a solid foundation for negotiations that could lead to genuine peace. The Planning Committee of the Israeli Occupations Municipality in Jerusalem approved the plan to build new units in the Gilo settlement, where nearly 40,000 settlers live. In addition, the occupation authorities plan on proposing the construction of 400 new settlement units in a number of the major Israeli settlements in the West Bank.
Israeli Defense Minister Ehud Barak suspended the planned transfer of the bodies of 84 Palestinian martyrs to the Palestinian Authority. This is seen as an attempt to use the transfer as a bargaining chip in negotiations for captive soldier Gilad Shalit. Israeli security sources said the procedure was coordinated with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The Palestinians were expecting to receive the bodies of their martyrs in the few coming days, after the plan was approved by Netanyahu months ago. For its part, the Palestinian Authority said it was not notified by Israel of its plan to suspend the deal.
The current flotilla efforts continue. Minister of Strategic Affairs Moshe Ya'alon is set to meet with Turkish and American representatives in New York this week to discuss the United Nations report on the 2010 Mavi Marmara incident. The document is due out on Thursday, and parties will try to reach an agreement whereby Israel will not be required to apologize to Turkey in exchange for keeping mum on aspects of the report connecting Ankara to the IHH activists aboard the 2010 flotilla. Israel is reportedly also considering financing a fund for the Turkish victims of the raid. Officials said that as part of an agreement, Israel will help Turkey render the UN report irrelevant. U.S. President Barack Obama may visit Israel soon, although no date has been set. That's the word from U.S. Ambassador to Israel James Cunningham, who informed Knesset Speaker Reuven Rivlin of Obama's intentions at a meeting at the Knesset this morning. Rivlin told his guests that he was pleased to hear the news, as the feeling here in Israel is that the White House relates to Israel as a burden rather than an ally. Cunningham, who is winding up a 3-year stint in Israel, said that the popular perception that President Obama is antagonistic towards Israel is unfounded. Some 2,000 people demonstrated outside the Supreme Court yesterday evening against the brief detention of 2 leading rabbis in what some have called a clash between religion and the rule of law. Police interrogated Rabbi Yaakov Yosef on Sunday and Rabbi Dov Lior last week over their approbation of a religious book dealing with Jewish behavior towards Gentiles in times of war. At the rally last night, Rabbi Lior stressed the importance of showing support for the Torah and its independence. The demonstration itself passed without incident, but after it ended, some participants were apprehended after they tried to block Herzl Street, leading police to arrest them. It was 4 adults and a minor. Moderate senior Rabbi Chaim Drukman said that while he objects to the contents of the book, the rabbis should have the right to express themselves. Others see the rabbis' actions as undermining the rule of law.
Here is not the incitement or interrogating people for incitement, because this issue is not special to religion and state. I think the real issue in terms of religion and state in Israel is which is above which. Is it the law above the halakha or the halakha above the law? And until we reach some kind of a basic document whereby law is declared to be superior, I think people would not internalize this basic rule of law concept, that law comes first and any other ideal or any other agenda of this or that portion of people in the state would be second.
Iran is actively taking advantage of the turmoil in the Middle East to intensify its influence in the region. This according to the head of the military intelligence, Major General Aviv Kochavi. At a briefing of the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee today, Kochavi said that Tehran was directly involved in organizing the Nakba and Naksa Day protests in Lebanon last month and is taking steps to ensure that these events will continue in the future. He also said that Iran and Hezbollah are playing a key role in supporting Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's attempt to suppress anti-government protests. It appears as though Tehran may be willing to restart nuclear negotiations. An Iranian foreign ministry spokesman said his country supports the resumption of talks with the P5+1 framework. The Islamic Republic remains at odds with major Western powers over its disputed nuclear program. Nuclear negotiations between Iran and the P5+1 parties ended in deadlock in January after Tehran refused to halt its uranium enrichment, and as demanded by the UN Security Council.
Residents of the town of Shihur are withholding information regarding their son, who's being accused of assassinating Hariri. My colleague Ogarit Dandash reports.
Until 10:30 a.m. on June 30th, 2011, Hussein Anesi was a financial auditor hailing from a religious family whose roots can be traced to the southern town of Shihur, and this was the complete introduction to the man's life. After the announcement of the indictment, Hussein, whose official name is Hussein Hassan Issa, became one of 4 suspects accused of carrying out the assassination of former Lebanese Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri. The period during which he held a low profile ended, and with it, Hussein is no longer a man living in the shadows. Hussein became an internationally wanted man for his role in Hariri's assassination, and particularly for recruiting Ahmad Abu Ades and later hiding him. The town of Imam Musa al-Sadr is once again in the spotlight.
لكنهم يجمعون على أن حسين لا يبدو من الناشطين.
While the residents are declining to answer inquisitive questions, they have unanimously confirmed that Hussein was neither an activist nor a security threat, saying he rarely visited the town. One of them recounts that he only came to attend the funeral of his brother, a martyr of the July War. Ahmad was martyred along with his son, Ali. As for the little information available on Hussein, it indicates that his family left for Iraq at the beginning of the Lebanese Civil War. The family returned in the 1980s, and Hussein spends most of his time in the capital, Beirut. He's married, and his older brother is named Ali. His relatives are close to Hezbollah. As for Hussein, the town's residents have no proof that he belongs to the party. He is a believer, a financial auditor, and his life's patterns do not point to any unusual activities. In the first indictment, Hussein Anesi is one of the 4 accused, but unknown to the general public. However, Arabs remember the indictment in the Darfur case, which included accusations of local figures in its first draft, an indictment that later accused the Sudanese president in its third draft, an accusation that could be played out sometime soon.
والاتهام لغده قريب.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows, and more at linktv.org/mosaic.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs which connect you to the world.